Section 3 of a Book of Nonsense by Edward Lear. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Phil Chenevert. There was an old person of Dover who rushed through a field of blue clover, but some very large bees stung his nose and his knees, so he very soon went back to Dover. There was an old man of the West who never could get any rest, so they set him to spin on his nose and his chin, which cured that old man of the West. There was an old person of Leeds whose head was infested with beads. She sat on a stool and ate gooseberry fool, which agreed with that person of Leeds. There was an old person of Cheadle who was put in the stocks by the beadle for stealing some pigs, some coats, and some wigs, that horrible person of Cheadle. There was an old person of Cadiz who was always polite to all ladies, but in handing his daughter he fell into the water, which drowned that old person of Cadiz. There was an old person of Annerly whose conduct was strange and unmannerly. He rushed down the Strand with a pig in each hand, but returned in the evening to Annerly. There was a young lady of Wales who caught a large fish without scales. When she lifted her hook, she exclaimed, "Only look!" That ecstatic young lady of Wales. There was an old man of the Isles whose face was pervaded with smiles. He sang "Hi-dum-diddle" and played on the fiddle, that amiable man of the Isles. There was an old person of Basing whose presence of mind was amazing. He purchased a steed, which he rode at full speed, and escaped from the people of Basing. There was a young lady of Welling whose praise all the world was a-telling. She played on the harp and caught several carp, that accomplished young lady of Welling. There was an old man who supposed that the street door was partially closed, but some very large rats ate his coats and his hats, while that futile old gentleman dozed. There was an old person of Tartary who divided his jugular artery, but he screeched to his wife, and she said, "Oh, my life, your death will be felt by all Tartary." There was an old person whose habits induced him to feed upon rabbits. When he'd eaten 18, he turned perfectly green, upon which he relinquished those habits. There was an old man of Whitehaven who danced a quadrille with a raven, but they said, "It's absurd to encourage this bird," so they smashed that old man of Whitehaven. There was an old man of the West who wore a pale plum-colored vest. When they said, "Does it fit?" he replied, "Not a bit," that uneasy old man of the West. There was a young lady of Sweden who went by the slow train to Weeden. When they cried, "Weeden Station," she made no observation, but thought she should go back to Sweden. There was an old man of Marseilles whose daughters wore bottle green veils. They caught several fish, which they put in a dish and sent to their pa at Marseilles. There was an old person of Chester whom several small children did pester. They threw some large stones, which broke most of his bones, and displeased that old person of Chester. There was an old man of Wrekin whose shoes made a horrible creaking, but they said, "Tell us whether your shoes are of leather, or of what, you old man of Wrekin?" There was an old man of the Cape who possessed a large Barbary ape, till the ape one dark night set the house all alight, which burned that old man of the Cape. There was a young lady whose nose was so long that it reached to her toes, so she hired an old leddy whose conduct was steady to carry that wonderful nose. End of Section 3 of A Book of Nonsense by Edward Lear.